با سلام خدمت بینندگان عزیز. امروز ما با بنیانگذار یکی از بزرگترین استارتاپ های کانادا، یک استارتاپ اسلامی به نام منزل، در خدمت شما هستیم با آقای محمد سواف از کانادا که امروز از دبی مهمان ما هستند. Mr. Sawwaf, thank you very much indeed for accepting my invitation. You were founder of one of the most amazing, or maybe I say maybe the most successful startups in Canada, Manzil. What was your biggest challenge to start that startup and continue to its way?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, for having me on your show. I'm honored and humbled to be present. When we look at the Canadian financial services and regulatory environment, it's actually the second hardest jurisdiction after China to set something up in the financial services industry. So, when you think about the barriers to entry, they're very, very high from a legal and regulatory perspective to establish anything in finance. And so when you add that plus a layer of Islamic finance, which has a lot of tax issues, right? So we had to solve for three main tax issues. One is the double land transfer tax on the buying and selling of real estate. The second one is of, capital gains tax, which is on, the gain of the profit over time. And then, of course, revenue tax, because in Islam, of course, we don't have riba, which is interest in the conventional system. But in Canada, that is tax exempt, right? So this actually took a 2-year process with myself and my team and, a lot of lawyers at the table and Sharia advisors to figure out how we could create a product that not only was competitive, but competitively priced and allowed for, all of the rules and regulations in Canada, so that there was no, let's call it, no missteps or no rules being broken within the system.
Okay, so in Islamic startups have been particularly successful in the field of fintech and in Islamic finance. But your startup focus on home and buying house without riba. What do you think that could be the reason for startup success?
So I think there's a few reasons for it. So number one is the market demand, right? So when you have 1.6 million Muslims today growing to 3 million over the next 10 years, and it's going to represent about 10% of the Canadian population, there is huge demand for a Sharia compliant product, especially when they're looking for something that aligns with their religious values and principles. And so then you look at, well, okay, if there's demand, how do we create a product that fits that demand? And, in Canada, everyone wants to have ownership of the property, right? They want to be untitled. And so with our products, that is exactly what we give them, right? We make sure that they are the owners of the home, right? As we say, like they're the malak, right? They have ownership, they have legal title, they have the ability to sell the property, to renovate the property, to rent the property. They have all of these features and benefits as if you had a conventional loan from one of the Canadian banks. So, making sure that you have product market fit and designing a product that the client or that the customers are asking for. There's two mentalities in the startup world. You can say, well, I think I'm going to solve a problem, so I'm going to create a product that people will and I'm going to force them to buy it. Or you can say, well, there is a bunch of people asking for something like this, and I'm going to solve that problem for them. So we actually went with the latter. So we wanted to solve a problem that people were talking about, and we created a product designed for that.
Well, I think not just Muslim and non-Muslim can be your customer. Is this right?
That is absolutely correct. So, just beyond the religious aspects of our product and our startup, when you think about just ethical finance in general, right, there's a huge front or a huge movement working in this direction, SRI, which is socially responsible investing, or ESG, which is ethical, social, and governance. And so, there's that movement is now becoming stronger and stronger. We actually have non-Muslims as clients on our platform. and we are non-discriminatory, right? So a lot of people when they think about banking, they think that it can never be ethical. We come to the table and say, yes, it can be. We are an ethical bank. We participate in building your wealth. We're not just here as predatory or as loan sharks, so to speak.
Well, everybody welcome to Manzil, right?
Yes, everyone is welcome to Manzil. Absolutely.
Generally, what is the biggest problem for starting Islamic startups in Canada?
Yes. So I would say the biggest challenge really is focusing on what you're going to offer, right? A lot of people in Canada decide that they want to create a startup for Muslims, but they don't end up, really marketing to them directly, and it's very fragmented. So they end up being, they say, well, I just want to be in the ethical space. But what happens is, especially amongst the Muslim community, they don't know, right? They don't know, are you appealing to ethical or are you appealing to, halal or halal certified, right? It's no different than halal food. Right?
Sorry, I interrupt your
yes.
word. You mean even some of Muslim in Canada doesn't have enough knowledge about halal and haram, right?
That's right. Yes. So even with us, when we started right off, and we thought because we had the assumption that people knew, and it became an education and an awareness campaign, because not only did people were very low on the financial literacy scale, but then when you add a layer of Islamic finance, it complicates things. And so we really had to go back to basics, educate them on the importance, right, of not only finance and how that can better their situations, but how do you then take those programs, make it Sharia compliant, and make it available in a digital platform.
As a founder of one of the most successful startups, Islamic startup, how do you see the future of Islamic startups in the world?
I think it's a very growing trend. Like Islamic finance, generally speaking, is a $3 trillion industry today. It's growing at, plus 10% every year in terms of a compounding annual growth rate. And a lot of that has to do with startups, because the digitization of finance is really allowing people to adopt.
You mean fintech,
Canada
right?
Yes, fintech, absolutely, right? When you have a very young Muslim base globally, they're digitally savvy, and they want everything accessible through their phone, that is how you get mass adoption in the marketplace.
Okay, for the last question, what is your advice to people who are looking to start startups in Iran or other countries of the world?
So 100%, I would say do your market research first. Find something that a lot of people are talking about that is a problem, right? Before I started Manzil, I was a retail banking advisor, and I used to meet with a lot of Muslims, and they would say the same thing. There's no Sharia compliant investments. There's no Sharia compliant loans. There's no Sharia compliant financing vehicles. So all of that data allowed me to then move and build something that I felt could fit the need of the community. So, for the community in Iran, I would suggest the same. Do your market research, understand, right, the features and benefits, and how can you differentiate yourself in the marketplace, right? If you can create a blue ocean opportunity or a greenfield opportunity, and you have no competition, then that is the best recipe for success, right? You don't want to build something that's already out there where people have other options to go to, right? Then you're just basically competing on price, and that is all. And you don't want to be in that game. You want to compete on value. You want to compete on customer service. You want to compete on how accessible and easy it is for these products to get into the hands of the consumers that you're attracting.
Well, I have another question. How much you're familiar with Iranian startups?
Sorry, say that again?
How much you familiar with Iranian startups?
Actually, I'm not familiar with Iranian startups at all and would love to learn more.
Okay. Mr. Sawwaf, thank you very much indeed for accepting my invitation.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much indeed.